You're listening to 50 Pirates in 50 Days on the Sports Objective Podcast. A new era of East Carolina football is here and will begin on August 31st when Mike Houston leads the Pirates into action at NC State. Between now and then, join us for a daily trip down memory lane as we experience Pirate football through the words of the men who made those memorable moments happen. Here's your host, Bubba Rosenbaum.
Welcome into the Sports Objective Podcast. Our 50 Pirates in 50 Days series rolls on, and we're catching up with a guy who not only played for the Pirates, but also spent, 8 years in a variety of capacities on Steve Logan's staff. Terry Tilghman. Terry, welcome into the show.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You're calling me in Colby, Kansas. I'm up here with my power company. I work for an integrated power company, and we're building a transmission power line and substation for some of the windmill farms up here in Colby, Kansas.
Colby, Kansas. What's it near? I guess is it near a town of note?
It is 100% near nothing.
Gotcha. All right.
Now this is exactly. It's about a 3-hour drive to Denver, to Aurora, Colorado, and Denver area.
Okay.
But I went the other day.
Kansas.
Yeah, it's on the western edge. I went the other day I was going to order a drone on Amazon, and it took too long for it to get here, so I just said, hey, Google, or I went on my Garmin and said, hey, where's the nearest Best Buy? It's 176 miles one way.
One of my favorite, I'm a huge fan of independent and red dirt country. One of my favorite country artists lives out in that area, Ned Ledoux, son of legendary Chris Ledoux. So he's out that way. So say hey if you run into him.
Yeah, I'll be able to tell who it is because he'll be the only truck out here that don't have mud on it.
There you go.
Hey, well, Terry, how far are you from the nearest Walmart?
Oh, I'm looking at it. It's right on the other side of my hotel. I'm in the parking lot talking to you on my work phone, and I'm looking through the parking lot. It's not a super center, but it's just a regular old Walmart. Now,
An old school Walmart. Wow, you don't see those. You see the super center and the little small ones. That's a regular old school one. Jeez.
That's right. It's just the old school one, and I think there's about 6 horses and about maybe 19 kids that go to Colby High School, and that's about all I can find around here.
No 5 stars.
No 5 stars. I'm staying at I don't know what they might not even have a football team, although I did see a sled over there on their practice field.
Oh, wow.
So maybe they might be playing 8-man football or something, but I'm staying in the 3-star hotel to sleep in here in Colby, Kansas.
Well, now I think we just explained why Bill Snyder recruited JUCOs and why the Kansas Jayhawks haven't had a good football team in a decade. Well,
that happens, I guess. You know, I'm just observing and reporting what I'm observing. So the rest of that, I'll leave it up to you, smart guys.
Now, Terry, how long have you been out there, and how long do you anticipate being out there?
Oh, it's a funny deal. I hired onto this outfit on Thursday of last week, so a week ago. And I plan on just retiring out here. I'm going to be out here. I actually live in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so I'll spend 3 weeks out and 1 week off, and then 3 weeks on and 1 week off, and I'm going to be the project manager for there's about 12 substations that they're going to build here in the area, and I'm going to help them just make sure they're organized. And as they say in the project managing business, I'm going to hope like heck that we're going to be under budget and on schedule.
Well, what's the schedule? How soon are you supposed to get your work complete?
Yeah, it sometimes it takes up to 3 years. It just depends. The main thing is that with, you guys ride around and look through your neighborhood at those distribution power lines and you see those white jugs sitting on the side of them. Those are the transformers for the distribution side, the smaller side. But here in the transmission power industry, we move power from substation to substation.
Okay.
And so it all really depends on the completion of the substation, depends on the availability of the company to give us our transformers, which are those ginormous things you see behind the chain link fence in those substations.
I'm ashamed of myself at this point, Terry, because you've been talking about, working for a power company and being out in Kansas, and I have not made a Wichita lineman joke yet.
Be careful. Somebody might come up next to the truck and hear something. We might get in trouble.
Yeah.
And Terry, you referenced, I knew you'd been down in Florida, and we certainly want to talk about your family and your son that just finished up with the Gators here later on. But now let's take a look at your career way back, I guess. Was it 1990 when you arrived at ECU?
August 1st of 1990, and I didn't leave until June of 2002.
So, obviously, plenty to talk about with over a decade spent with the Pirates. How does a guy from Mesquite, Texas, end up in Greenville, North Carolina?
Well, here's the way it was. I was a junior in high school in Mesquite, Texas, just outside of Dallas. Going into my senior year, there were one of those lists that came out, and it said I was one of the top 100 athletes in the state of Texas. I was being recruited by 36 Division I schools. Still hadn't played a snap of senior football.
Wow. And
had 5 scholarship offers, including University of Texas, Texas Tech, and other places. And 2 minutes and 52 seconds into the second quarter of my first football game as a senior there in Mesquite, I blew my ACL. Well, in 1990, when you blow your ACL, that's a bigger deal than it is now. Now they change ACLs like most people change socks. You know, they actually had to go in and reconstruct the ligament and get a cadaver ligament and all that good stuff. And long story short, Dale Steele was our recruiting coordinator, wide receiver coach at East Carolina. He was really good friends. His brother, Kevin Steele, who's been a long time at Baylor University, was at Oklahoma as the defensive coordinator. Long story short, Dale Steele called Mickey Delamar, my head football coach at Mesquite High School, and you know, they started recruiting me. I went on an official visit to East Carolina. I went on an official visit to University of Texas, El Paso. And then I had a home visit from Spike Dykes at my house. Yeah, at Texas Tech. And so after my home visit came back almost to the Christmas time, the recruiting calendar that I didn't even know about was starting to wind down, but they wanted to hit my house one time. So Coach Steele brought Bill Lewis into my house, popped the VCR tape in and talked about East Carolina football and this and that and the other. And it was funny because we were so poor that my mom went down to Rent-A-Center and got a whole new living room suit just for the coaches that were coming in.
Wow.
and believe it or not, we're one of the two people that might actually return that furniture because after about 3 weeks, she sent it back. But anyway, Coach Lewis came in, they did their spiel, and we said, hey, we appreciate your conversation. You know, we appreciate your interest, but Coach Dykes was coming in right behind him. And as a matter of fact, I think they backed out of my driveway right as Coach Dykes and his guy were pulling in the driveway. Coach Dykes comes in and does his story, and then I just asked him the same question that I asked Coach Lewis. I said, hey, listen, I've just had ACL surgery. I said, if I step off the plane in Lubbock, Texas, and can never and tear my ACL again and have nerve damage or whatever it is and can never play for you, what happens? And he said, and I started thinking, as he's starting to get that long Texas drawl brought out in him, I remembered what Coach Lewis had told me. He says, Terry, as long as you don't flunk out of school or commit a felony, you'll have your education paid for at East Carolina. So about the time that Coach Dykes smacked his lips and said, hey, well, you know, I don't know. I said, Coach Dykes, I appreciate you coming to the house, but I'm going to go be an East Carolina Pirate. And since November 15th or 18th or whatever it was of 1989, that's what I've been doing. I've been a Pirate.
It's a great story.
Yeah. So I mean, like he hemmed and hawed, and I didn't want to give it a chance whether it was a West Texas draw or what. I jumped over there. And my mom and dad said, "You go ahead, kid. If you pick it, that's what you're going to do."
That's awesome. One of those times, I guess, where you just went with that gut instinct.
Yeah, my dad told me a long time ago. I asked him when I was like 14 years old, and my dad's probably one of the smartest besides Steve Logan, one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. And I asked him, I said, Dad, when I turn 18 years old, where am I supposed to pick? How am I supposed to pick where to live? And he said, boy. Now, remember, I was 16 years old before I knew my name was Terry. It was either boy, come here, or hey. And so he said, boy, here's how you do it. He said, you get you a map of the United States and you put a dot in every city that you have a relative living in. I said, okay. He said, if you draw a circle around the outermost dots. I said, okay. He said, live outside that circle. Because and then looking back at it now as a 47-year-old man, what he was doing was saying, hey, get away from family, get away from support, go grow up and make life force you into doing uncomfortable situations and being able to resolve issues as life came out. And I'll be dadgum if August 1st, 1990, I moved 1,592 miles away from Mesquite, Texas, and I stayed around for 12 years. I never went home.
So after arriving at ECU, obviously redshirted during that 1990 season, the building process.
I did not.
Okay.
I played 4 straight years at East Carolina, and then tore my knee in my second game when we played the University of Washington. I actually dislocated my shoulder and had to have shoulder surgery. So I went back and got a 5th year from the NCAA. And so what I used to tell my players at East Carolina and anywhere else that I coached college football for almost 20 years, I told them, I said, hey, when you've got as many Division I football reps, game reps, under your belt that I do, then you can question what I'm telling you.
Right.
And I knew that in that era that I was coaching that there was no way anybody was going to be able to play 5 years of college football like I did when I was at East Carolina.
You mentioned that, Coach. You mentioned the Washington game. Coach Logan just absolutely loved that trip out to Washington, didn't he?
Oh, it was great. We went out there on Thursday. It was unbelievable. Yeah. We went out there on Thursday. I bet we spent $6,000 at dinner on Thursday, right there on the harbor, right there on the deal. We went to watch the Seattle Seahawks practice. We had ourselves a large time until Chris Hester had to come in and play quarterback, and then it was like, oh, no, here we go.
I was actually being sarcastic. I thought I heard a story that Logan was pretty pissed about that trip. Or maybe
actually, Logan's quote about that trip was probably, hey, we flew over a lot of teams that could have kicked our butts worse than those guys. And they hammered us pretty good.
That's what I'm trying to remember who it was we were talking to, Terry, and I want to say he was telling us a story about how in the locker room Coach Logan was going through his pregame speech, and then he opened the door, and then you heard the Washington Huskies coming down the tunnel, and he shut it real fast.
Yeah, they were scary people. Now, I mean, we thought at pregame, I was like, dang, that kid's a big old tight end. That guy would be a big old tight end. Said, nope, that's his outside linebackers. and they were big boys. And a guy by the name of DeMarco Farr I was playing right guard, was my defensive tackle that I had the privilege of blocking for about a quarter and a half. And the first time that I fired off and hit DeMarco Farr in the face, not only could I not tell you where he went, he hit me so hard I couldn't tell you the general direction he headed in. And then the next time I tried to low scoop him, and then the third time I tried to scramble cut him, and he just pressed down on my back, and that's what popped my shoulder out of socket, and I was done for the year.
So taking a look at your career as a whole, that's what obviously that 91 season is so special and gets talked about all the time, and rightfully so. And then you had that transitional period between Coach Lewis and Coach Logan, and then like you referenced a minute ago, talking about the quarterback situation that was unsettled for a couple of years due to Marcus's injury and other things. And then 94, when you're finishing up your career, we're on the way back up and going to the Liberty Bowl. So do you have anything what are your favorite memories of ECU, both individually and as a team?
Well, first of all, Coach Logan was awesome. Coach Lewis was awesome. Coach Shankwater was awesome. Jeff Jagosinski was, it still is one of my really good friends in my life. And so my positive experience, I think, who was the writer for the Raleigh News? AJ Carr, is that the name?
Oh,
long-time beat writer for the Raleigh-Durham News. But anyway, he asked me one time during my senior year, he said, hey, Terry, he says, what's it like playing college football as a Division I offensive lineman? I said, hey, it's 72 car wrecks in a row. and I loved every bit of it. But if you think about it, my entire career, I came in, I played as a freshman. I turned around and we won the Peach Bowl. We went 11-1, number 9 in the country. And then we lost our head coach. Our new head coach came, they promoted from within, and then we rebuilt the program from there. I was actually all-team Conference USA before Conference USA was in. I think it was the Liberty Bowl Alliance.
Liberty Bowl Alliance, yes.
Yeah. And
Liberty Bowl Alliance.
When people ask me about my career at East Carolina, and really just my kids are the only ones that ever asked me, they said, Dad, what do you think about the time at East Carolina? I said, listen, my entire football career at East Carolina was complete. I did everything that anybody could ever want as a college football player I actually got to experience it there at East Carolina.
You know, I'll want to ask you about a specific game. In '94, just from a personal note, that's really where my fandom for East Carolina began. I was 14 years old and watching East Carolina play South Carolina on WNCT TV9 in Columbia. And that was a high-scoring game. East Carolina won. I don't remember the score.
56-42.
It was raining. It was raining. Yeah, it rained the entire game.
Not for that one.
Not okay, go ahead, yeah.
Terry, you're thinking about the 92 game.
That's right.
The 92 game was raining sideways.
Yes.
56-42. Do you remember that? That was the game that made me a Pirate fan. We put 56 on South Carolina, and it wasn't raining that game, so maybe you don't remember.
I do remember. I remember Tom Scott, and I think I had like 26 knockdowns in that game because everything we were doing was three-step drop, get rid of the football, and so all we had to do was either slide right or slide left and just cut what it was ever in the gap, and I think I set the record for knockdowns in that game. The other things I remember in that game was that we had to write letters to our loved ones. That was the motivation of that week. Hey, write and. Can you imagine going and tell a college football player right now to address an envelope and actually write a letter? You know, they'd be trying to tweet it or text it or email it or something.
No. Why did you have to do that week? What was that exercise for?
The idea was that we were going to individually dedicate the football game to someone that was in our life and was powerful in our life.
That's good. I like that.
And he wanted us to chew on it all week long and to think about it all week long. So we did it on a Sunday before the game. And then I just remember that I wrote that letter to my mother, and she died 6 years ago of colon cancer. And the Christmas before she passed away, which is about 3 weeks before she passed away, she actually showed me the letter in her purse.
Awesome.
And she'd been carrying it. She'd been carrying that letter around in her purse since the day it came to the house. And so, since 1994 all the way to whatever it was, 2013, she had the letter, and that's what I remember about that game.
While we're on the topic of the '94 season, like I said, that's the season finished 7-5. Unfortunately, lost the Liberty Bowl to Illinois. As far as, I know you were talking about the talent you faced out in Seattle against the Washington Huskies, and that defense that Illinois had was with Simeon Rice, I guess is what, Kevin Hardy. They were remarkable. Was that probably some of the best you had faced, or who were the best players you played during your time at ECU?
Yeah, DeMarco Farr, Simeon Rice, Kevin Hardy, and really the best player I ever played against, the kid that I had to practice against for 2 or 3 years, Robert Jones, at inside linebacker. And so those are probably the best, talent on the defensive front that I remember. And I'll still, if you looked up the NFL card, the rookie card for Simeon Rice, you see Shane McPherson flopping in front of him as he tries to reach out there and cut him in space. And Simeon's knocking a ball down, so that was his rookie card. But the thing that I remember about that game, wasn't that the year that Marcus got hurt too?
Let's see.
What was the year we played UCF and Marcus got hurt?
93.
That was 93.
1993, we're sitting there playing a football game against little old UCF, and we're battling. I was trying to tell you guys this story before we came on the air, but number 58, the defensive end from Central Florida, we threw a football pass down the field, whatever, and I was beating my guy up and, just waiting for the whistle to blow. And the thing about Marcus's football, and I remember this vividly, Jeff Blake, when he would throw a football, it would go past your head, and if he threw it on your side of the offensive line, you could hear it whiz as it went past you. But Marcus Crandell's ball was so tight and so quick on his delivery, you could actually hear his fingers snap. And that's how you knew the ball was going. As an offensive lineman, you just knew that the ball was gone because every once in a while we could hear that finger snap off the football. Well, anyway, I hear the finger snap, and then all of a sudden I hear Marcus crying, and he's moaning, and I look around back there, and he looks awful. He's sitting on his butt with his foot in the air. The problem is his right leg is pointed down to the ground. His toes are to the ground. He's dislocated his ankle and broke his leg. And I see number 58, defensive end over there, that just drug him down from behind before they had a horse collar rule, and I went to cussing. I went to screaming at that boy. I was going off on that guy, and I was going to kill him. Long story short, referee pushed me back in the huddle and said, "Hey, shut up." They carted off Marcus, and then here we go. We come out of the huddle. He's playing field defensive end. We're on the right hash, first down. We come out of the huddle, and I just say, "Hey, 58, I see you over there." And we'd run a football play, we ran a zone play or something into the boundary on the right-hand side. So second down, we're still on the right hash, which means he's still on the left tackle. I break the huddle and come out there and say, "Hey, watch this now, Big 58. I still see you over there." And I think we threw a 6-yard out route or something to the left hash. And then I'll never forget, it's like 11 minutes left in the third quarter or whatever it is. We go up on the left hash, and I break the huddle, and I come out as a right tackle, and I just say, "Hey, 58, it's a pass." And I just go in a 2-point stance like, "Hey, come get you some." And as he came at me, I reached up and grabbed him with my left hand and then just took my right hand and beat him about the face and neck with an open palm repeatedly until the ball was thrown. I could hear the ball. I thought I could hear the ball. He started to turn like he was going to go chase the football, and my last hand slap grabbed his helmet, and he ran out of his helmet. Well, then I'm standing there with his helmet in my hand, and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do in front of 36,000 people? I don't know what to do with this helmet. So I throw it behind me and just keep running. Well, now he has to take about a 14-yard jog to pick up his helmet, and then he left the game. He never came back.
No.
Never came back in the game. And that's the only person in college football that I can say I actually scared or taunted or just whatever you want to say. I intimidated him. He never came back in the game. He left the game with all his ball. He was perfectly healthy, but I never saw him in the game after that.
I wonder if his coaches were scared something was going to happen to him.
I have no idea. A bunch of tobacco farmers hanging on the fence. They might not have been. It couldn't have been too much fun for him on the sidelines, but
right,
right now. And that was the '93 game. Was the guy when we played them near the end of the '94 season? Was he back? Do you recall?
I don't remember. I couldn't remember his name, and I didn't really look after we came back in '94.
I do not remember playing them in '94, Bubba.
Yeah, we played them there. I guess it was the next to last game of the regular season, and we beat them to get to 6-4, and because then I remember we went out to the Liberty Bowl No, it was in Greenville. It was a close game. They gave us everything we wanted, but we pulled it out there at the end.
I have no recollection of that game. I have no idea why. Then I remember closing it out in Memphis.
Yeah, and we went out to Memphis and dominated Memphis, and then of course the Liberty Bowl after that.
Yeah, I remember the '93 game where Crandell got injured, and then I remember the '96 game in Greenville, UCF's first year at
Dante Culpepper.
Yeah, exactly, Culpepper. And,
right. But to tell you the truth, guys, I played Central Florida however many times we played. I played all the way to '95 season, and I don't remember him. I don't remember him ever coming back in the game. I just remember that at that time on the third floor, right outside the film office, was really the film and the photography room was all in the same place, and our team photographer saw me cussing that kid while Marcus was getting toted up, and then he probably took 40 pictures of me. We could go up there as players and look at slides. And so in '96, I go back up there and just happened to start flipping through that book, and I saw that picture that I sent you guys earlier via text message, and that's probably the best picture I've ever seen of me playing college football. I had a great time.
Terry, something I wanted to ask you about, Coach Mike Houston's staff, as I'm sure you're well aware of, features Steve Shankweiler. So give us a glimpse behind the scenes and talk about Coach Shank.
Shankweiler, to me, was, again, probably one of the smartest people I've ever known. And the thing about it with Shankweiler was that he was a great teacher. He had so much information as an offensive line coach that he wanted to share with you, but he was a great reader of men and knew what young men could handle and what young men couldn't handle. And so he would tell older kids more information about the game of football, but us younger kids, he was only there in 91, and he gave me just enough to play, just enough to succeed, and didn't overwhelm me. And I just remember after coaching college football for 20 years, I really appreciated people used to tell me all the time, say, Terry, I'd have a problem with some play or trying to teach an offensive lineman some different scheme. And Jags would look at me all the time and say, hey, what are you telling them? What are you telling the offensive line? And Shankwaller was extremely proficient at giving you just the amount of information that you needed, just that you could handle, and let you go just blossom and play. And, Shankwaller, I remember the story Dale Steele told me that when my film, and yeah, it was a film back in those days, when my reel-to-reel film came in and Steve Shankwaller saw me playing high school football as a junior in Texas, his exact quote was, hey, what junior college is this? Because in Texas, we played in front of 20,000, 24,000 people every Friday night. And that football's huge. That's what we did. I didn't know any different. But that was Shank's quote. And Shankwaller was actually the first guy to ever tell me that my son, little Terry, was born. He handed me a note on August 24th, right after a big old 5.5-hour Bill Lewis scrimmage, and said, "Here, go call your girlfriend. Your son is born." Oh wow! Yeah, and so and my other two children were actually born right there in Pitt County at what little Terry still referred to at the time was Marcus's hospital. And so my two children were born there. My middle child, the daughter Jordan Kay, and then my oldest boy Jacob, my youngest boy Jacob, who's playing at the University of Florida right now as a long snapper.
So as your playing career was wrapping up, was coaching something that you really saw in your future?
Well, not really. Here's what I found out. I had a family. I had, little Terry was born in 91. And then Jordan Kay was born in 94, and so I was just trying to survive. And obviously with as many injuries as I had, I've had, the knee surgeries and the shoulder surgeries and that kind of stuff, I knew I wasn't going to be drafted or anything. And so Steve Logan had an opening on his staff when I think Ken Treadway left the program, and he said, Terry, he says, hey, if you want to be a college football coach and you want to come try this thing, he let me come on as a GA. And then turned right around in the summer of '96 and offered me the full-time position there as recruiting coordinator, assistant offensive line coach, and I ran with it.
So, and then at one point, you also coached the tight ends, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. I coached the tight ends, and I was director of football operations there for the last part of it. And I had a great time. It was just a great time in Greenville, and we cried and cried and cried when we had to leave. I took a job at the University of North Alabama, making about half the money that I was making at East Carolina, and my family went to Texas to live with Jennifer's parents. Wow. And I told Coach Hudspeth, who hired me at the time at North Alabama, I said, listen, Coach, I said, I'm extremely confident, obviously, because you've been through a 6-hour interview with me. I said, I'm confident in what I can do to help you win football games. And I said, let's just make a deal. At the end of the season, if I'm not a good fit for you anymore, or you don't like what you see, or this hasn't worked out, then fire me. I'm okay with that. I'm a big boy. I've been fired before. It ain't that big a deal. Well, then we went, I think, 13-1, and lost in the semifinals before playing for the Division II championship. And he doubled my salary, and I hung on for another 3 years before leaving to go work with Doug Martin at Kent State University.
Kind of going back to your time at ECU, obviously Coach Logan, so well known for not only his offenses, but just being a tremendous quarterback coach. And so give us a glimpse behind the scenes and talk a little bit about Coach Logan.
Well, first of all, Coach Logan is the reason why I'm a grown man and know what I can do and can think and can and he's given me so many skills that he doesn't even know that he's given me, and I remind him of it every once in a while with a text message every once in a while. But Steve was the smartest human being on earth. He was ahead of his time. He figured out that Bill Walsh was doing something special there with the San Francisco 49ers, and he took the Walsh approach to a lot of stuff. And, I couldn't – if anybody on earth could say more great things that's not related to Steve Logan about Steve Logan than me, I'd be shocked because, like I said, he came on as the football coach, took care of me as a player, took care of me as fed my family, gave me a job making $30,000 a year there, and I didn't have a chance to go earn money anywhere else. And I hung out there. I was on him. I was wanting to learn from him, and whatever I could learn, from him, that's what I wanted to do. In regards to coaching quarterbacks, I don't know, because I was coaching other stuff. I was in the middle. I was trying to coach offensive linemen or coach tight ends or arrange official visits for Steve or arrange a football trip if we're going to travel somewhere or, you know, so I was always busy. I didn't get the chance to be in the room with Steve while he was coaching those guys, but man, what a brilliant human being. And Doug Martin was an offensive coordinator, and I'll never forget the Syracuse game. I'm up in the press box, and for some reason, Steve Logan from the field, I remember two things about the game. One, the referee dropped dead of a heart attack there on the field and was revived on the sideline while we all sat on a knee and just waited. Jags was up in the press box. I was on the sideline helping him. He was calling down changes for me. And I saw the opening kickoff of the second half. I saw the official fall of his, and literally die on the turf, and then was brought back by the paramedics. What a great place to die! A major sports place to die. Have a heart attack or a cardiac event. Do it in a stadium because there's so many paramedics and everybody around to help save you. They brought him right back to life, and he ended up walking out of the hospital, I think, 4 days later. The other thing I remember about that is Steve Logan, for some reason, he'd always get criticized by fans because he wouldn't be at the ball. He wouldn't be on the line of scrimmage looking.
He liked to kneel down and look from a distance.
But from about 25, 30 yards away.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the reason why that, and some people might have told you guys this, but he could see better. He could see what the quarterback was seeing. He could read what the defense was doing, and he fell into something that Paul Pasqualoni wasn't covering in the passing game. Or we actually started running the counter game. We pulled both guards and tackles around the corner, and he just finally. And Doug Martin was a young offense coordinator, quarterback from the University of Kentucky, blah blah blah, and Steve just took over the game. And Steve, and that's something Steve never did. And I just remember in that game, he took over. He said, "Hang on, Doug, I got this." And he would call it out mid cadence while the quarterback's calling something, by calling the play that he just called. He would already have the other play relayed into Doug and signaled down to the field because he had a bead on him. And once he got into that track mind and got a bead on him, we had a chance to win. And I believe we did win that football game.
Coach Logan, so well known for his one-liners or Loganisms, as people refer to. And so, you have a funny story or two that maybe behind the scenes, whether like in the coach's office or on the recruiting trail, and that you could share about Coach?
Not really. I know this. As soon as you started saying Loganisms, I said, hey. The first thing that popped into my brain was that he would slap a knot on your head that a Boy Scout can't untie. And so he could tell all the players that every once in a while. And, the thing about Logan is Logan always wanted to challenge me for some reason. I don't know, because I was his player, and now he thought of me as a player at a GA, and now I was on his coaching staff. But he would always challenge me in staff meetings, and he would say, hey, he would use an SAT word that I didn't understand or didn't know, and I'd come back around behind him, and I'd say, hey, Steve, what did that mean, or what does that mean? He'd say, go look it up. And he wasn't being sarcastic or egotistical or anything. He wanted me to just go learn how to look up the words that I didn't know and appreciate just reading the definition and figuring it out myself. And the only time in my career at East Carolina that I actually got Steve Logan, we were getting ready to play Virginia Tech. And understand that he would quiz me on words, vocabulary, and I'd quiz him on words. And I'd get some of them, but he'd get all of them. And the only time that I got him, I said, Coach, we're about to go to Blacksburg and play Virginia Tech. He said, yep. I said, and we were in the coach's locker room after practice. I said, hey, Virginia Tech's official name is the Virginia Tech Poly Institute of Science. He said, yep. And I said, hey, what does poly mean?
Multiple.
And it put him in a flat spin. He could not think of it. He was in the middle of a brain fart or a mini stroke or something. He could not think of it. And he went to his office, Googled it, printed it out, and brought it back to me and says, hey, it means multiple.
I don't think he Googled it.
He probably didn't Google it back then. He definitely looked it up in the dictionary and put it on the copy machine and hit print one time and brought me the copy of it, because he wanted to prove to me that he could take the ribbon and take the challenge, and he'd go look it up.
I want to ask you specifically about I'll take you back to 1999 when Hurricane Floyd came through, and you were on the coaching staff. and we went down to Columbia, South Carolina, and were stuck down there for a week after beating South Carolina, and then came back to Raleigh to play Miami, and of course beat the Hurricanes there at Carter Finley. What do you remember about that week, the South Carolina game, the week after being stuck in Columbia, and then beating Miami and Raleigh?
I remember a lot. First of all, it was my first football game really as a football officer. Well, no, I've been doing it for a while, but it was that first game of the year we're going to do a road trip. And so I was always worried because Steve Logan's motto was, hey, to be early is to be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be left behind. And so I always wanted the buses in front of Scott Hall where we loaded up players. I wanted them suckers to be there at least an hour early, or I was in a panic as the ops guy. And so, needless to say, they were running late. They were already past their deadline. They were supposed to be there, I can't remember whatever time it was, but they were running 35 minutes late, and I finally got a hold of the state trooper that was escorting them, and he was the first one to tell me that the lake, Hurricane Floyd came in the eastern North Carolina and went over to Raleigh and spun around for 3 or 4 days and then backed its way back out into the Atlantic. But that state trooper on that phone call was the first one to ever tell me that the lake up in Bunn, North Carolina, had lost its dam and all that water was coming downhill. He said, Terry, if you want to leave Greenville, y'all better be ready to go when we get there. And 3 buses and about 7 state troopers pulled up in front of Scott Hall, and it was screeching. And we got on the bus and left, and when we crossed over on 264, when we crossed over the Tar River, there was water up to the bottom step of the bus as we went through it, because here comes the floodwaters.
Wow.
So then, long story short, we go to play Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was the head football coach, and it was his home opener there in Columbia. 78,000 people in the stadium. And like a regular old East Carolina Pirate, not only did we defeat him, we just hung around and just visited with him for the next 6 or 7 days. I remember getting off the bus or getting on the bus after Coach Logan's game show and everything, and going back into getting ready to pull out. And I said, okay, I'm the last one on the bus, so it's time to go. And all of a sudden, Mike Hamrick sticks his face on the bus and says, "Hey, y'all can't go home.
Y'all can't go home."
Right, with that twitching nose and stuff. He said, "Y'all can't go home. Y'all got to go back to Two Notch Road to the Ramada." The next thing that I remember is that Shane McPherson, our left guard, in that game, as we're going through as coaches and we're picking up laundry for these guys, because they don't travel with all that much clothes and stuff, and so they're literally sitting in their boxers in their hotel room as we gather laundry and take it to Lou Holtz's stadium there in Columbia and wash clothes. Well, all of a sudden, Shane McPherson says, "Coach, come here." And he pointed at the TV, and it was CNN, and there's a guy canoeing down the Tar River, and he says, "Hang on." He says, "Hang on. There's my apartment." As it went by the Tar River Estates, there was Shane McPherson's apartment. He said, "Coach, you know what's amazing about that?" I said, "Yeah, I do, but you go ahead and tell me." He said, "Coach, I live on the 3rd floor."
Oh, wow.
And people were canoeing past his house on CNN, and he lives on the 3rd floor of Tar River Estates. That's how much that water had risen. The other thing that I remember is I remember sitting there on the – and, again, I was still in my role as DFO, assistant offensive line coach. I don't even remember what I was coaching at that time. But all of a sudden, we were coaching at a Catholic school there in Columbia. We're coaching practice. And all of a sudden, a news van, like a Channel 11 news van or a Channel 7, I don't remember what the affiliation was, all of a sudden they pull up into the parking lot. Well, I don't have an SID with me. They've all gone back to Greenville to take care of their families. And I see Steve sitting over there watching quarterbacks throw footballs and just shaking his head. And I'm like, well, I'm available. I'll just leave practice. Whatever I was doing, I just let somebody else do it. And I went over there. I said, listen, guys, y'all can't be here till after practice. And even then, I'm not sure. I said, y'all just wait right here for you. And all of a sudden, a Lincoln Town car pulls up. And I'm like, what the heck's the Lincoln Town? I mean, is this the mayor? What is this guy doing? I mean, there's a limousine. And a gentleman stepped out of his vehicle, and he was in the finest suit that I've ever seen in my life, live in person. And he said, hey, Terry, I need to see Coach Logan. And I said, sir, I'm sorry to say this to you, but we're right in the middle of practice. You're going to have to wait till after practice to see him, if you get to see him then. He said, no, I think he'd like to see me now. And about that time, Steve gave me the third look. You know, he gives you 3 looks. You're like, oh, crap. Well, he walks over there right in the middle of practice and just sends the quarterback on a break and comes back over there. Long story short, it was a reverend from the Baptist church there in Columbia with the news reporter and the camera and all that other stuff, says, hey, Steve, we've heard about your plight. You guys have been here for 3 or 4 days. I'd like to give you $10,000 cash, and wrote him a check and handed it to him.
Wow.
To take care of any student athletes that we had issues with or any problems that he just wanted to make sure that our players were taken care of. And you remember the Carolina Panthers.
I think you just caught us on some old NCAA violations there, Terry.
No, I didn't either, because I covered our butts too. Listen to how the story ends. The Carolina Panthers had sent over their practice jerseys for us to practice in, because we didn't have practice gear.
Wow.
You know, in a couple of restaurants and in a couple of workout centers had opened their weight room up for us in case we wanted to come lift weights with the kids or whatever it is, and just get them out of the hotel. Long story short, Steve gave me the check, and I went back and called Rosie Thompson, our NCAA compliance director, and Steve endorsed the check over to Chuck Young, who's probably still in town doing the FCA thing with the players now. And Rosie Thompson called the NCAA and said, hey, this is the story. She told him the story and said, hey, what do we do with this money? And the NCAA said, hey, listen, we've been following you too, and as long as you can receipt everything that covers that $10,000, we'll just write it off. If you got $10,000 worth of receipts, it won't be a violation or anything. Longer story shorter, 26 student athletes lost everything they owned in that flood. And by the time we beat NC State and got back to Greenville, North Carolina, thanks to Chuck Young and his ministries, those kids had brand new apartments to live in over by Lowe's and the Hilton and everything, and they'd never missed a beat.
Now, the Miami game at NC State, what do you remember about that game?
Here's what I remember about that game. We came in, and we kept telling our players and coaching our players up, said, listen, it's going to be dead. We're renting a stadium. There's not going to be anybody in town. There's not going to be any fans there. You're going to have to bring your own excitement, and we're going to have to do something. They're a pretty good football team, that Miami Hurricanes. And all of a sudden, we come in at 2.5 hours before kickoff, and there's 40,000 East Carolina fans swinging from the rafters of that stadium.
Yeah, they took buses. They bussed them from
because
Greenville.
they'd had enough of the hurricane and the cleanup and all that stuff. And our guys actually were getting off the bus, and they were rocking the bus back and forth just because they were so excited to see their fans there. And then all of a sudden, on the first play from scrimmage, Miami threw a touchdown pass to Quadre Ishmael. I think that was his name. And took it in to score, and I said, oh, boy, this is going to be a long day. And we turned around and beat them 28-7, and then 40,000 East Carolina fans tore NC State's goalpost down.
Yeah, Keith Stokes made some huge plays in the fourth quarter there. David Garrard, and came from behind, actually. Miami jumped up big in that game. And
was it 28-7 was the final?
No, you're thinking of the 96.
It was 27-23.
27-23.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're thinking of 96 was, what, 31-7?
Right. Robert Jones hit me in the head too many times.
Right. You just get your games mixed up, that's all.
But then I remember coming back to Greenville, and our players, we had an off week that week. Our players spent the week at the Walmart Center handing out Budweiser cans of water.
Yeah, that's something that Budweiser does to this day, actually. A lot of people don't realize that. Whenever there's a natural disaster, Anheuser-Busch will always start brewing water.
I know, and I had to go check players in to volunteer, and we had a 12-man cycle that rotated every 3 hours. And then I did the Brian Bailey show that week, and callers were screaming that we tore down NC State's goalpost. I said, listen, we paid NC State enough money that they can replace their goalposts. They didn't give us the stadium; we rented it from them. I said, and just so you know, our players spent the entire off week doing nothing but recovery efforts.
Well, the best part about the tearing down their goalposts and it was the fans, not the players that tore down anyway. Right. But my favorite part about that whole story, if you remember, Terry, is the NC State played East Carolina at the end of '99, the regular season, at Dowdy-Ficklen for the first time ever, and we had basically said, had State beats us in Greenville, they can have our goalpost. Well, the goalpost got tore down in Greenville at the end of that NC State game, but it was because we beat them.
And was it? I think the '99 season was the year that the Upper Deck was debuted.
It was '99 or '98.
I'm sorry.
I think it was '99 because I have on my wall in my house. I have an aerial shot, one of those pictures that they hired a photographer to sit up there in the airplane and take pictures of that stadium, and that's the stadium that's framed in my house. Yeah,
the Upper Deck was definitely there in '99, and we actually had temporary end zone seats for that NC State game.
We had about 5,000 in what is now the Murphy Center end zone, and then toward the school board end zone, you had a couple thousand.
It's funny because you guys mentioned that, and I'm sitting there in my house watching TV. In the top left corner is that picture of that stadium in '99. And now right above my TV for years, all of my children grew up looking at it, was my 1992 or 91 season Peach Bowl jersey that was framed and given to me by the athletic department. And here's the reason why I tell you that story, is that it used to sit right dead center of my 70-inch high-definition TV in the middle of my living room, because that baby boy of mine, Jacob, plays for the Florida Gators. Well, they just played in the Mercedes Dome in Atlanta, and I was there for the Peach Bowl last year. And to lead that story back around, my jersey has now moved about 18 inches to the left of my TV, and my son's jersey from the Peach Bowl is framed right now.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And anybody that grew up in the South would appreciate the fact that whether it was their name or if they didn't get to play SEC football, if they got to get their name on the back of a jersey because their son played for SEC football, then I'm excited to have it. And Jacob tore it off his shoulder pads there at the Mercedes Dome and gave it to me at the end of the game. And Miss Jennifer had it framed, within 2 weeks and scooted over and stuck on the wall.
That's an awesome story. And I was going to say, going into this, I guess what year two now, Dan Mullen, and let's talk about the Gators very briefly. How do you see things going down there?
Well, see, that's the thing about it. Since about 6 years ago, I got out of college football coaching, and so I'm just a fan. I'm a fan that you don't want to watch college football with, because I constantly analyze what the defense is doing to the offense, and I will scream at you if you don't let me rewind the TV or something. But Dan Mullen's done a great job, and my son has graduated. He graduated in May with a sports marketing degree, and so in 3.5 years he's got his degree, and he will be the starting long snapper in the season coming up. And he's about to go on scholarship. And he's been a walk-on for the previous 3.5-4 years, but this season he will be the starting long snapper on scholarship for the Gators, and I hope like heck they do good.
August 24th, week 0, Miami opens up with Florida, so they'll kind of have the stage all to themselves. There's a couple more games on August 24th, but not many.
Pirate fans, just look for number 49 coming out there with Tilghman on his back, just snapping the football on.
Yeah, and all Pirate fans should be able to watch that one, because, like I said, that's really the only game in town that day on August 24th, except for I think Arizona plays Hawaii that day. But
and I believe if I'm right, it's in the swamp.
It's a neutral field.
It's like Camping World Stadium or whatever they call it now.
Yeah, okay. Camping World in Orlando, the Citrus Bowl.
Well, me and 72,000 of my closest friends will be hanging out there. And my wife, I told these guys when I signed on to the construction job up here, I said, listen, y'all can do whatever you want to me and make me work as many days as you want to. I don't care. But August 23rd, I'm flying to Daytona Beach, and we're riding to Orlando on the 24th, because my oldest boy will turn 28, and my baby boy will be playing the Miami Hurricanes.
That's awesome. And kind of a side note, that's what we're going to catch up with Gator Hall of Famers Chris Doring and Jaquez and Quezzy Green to take a look at that matchup. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Enjoy it.
But Terry, we appreciate your time. We certainly didn't anticipate going this long, but we've enjoyed hearing the stories, hearing about your time in the purple and gold, both as a player and as a coach. And we would love to have you back on down the road.
Hey, just send me a message. I'll make myself available, and go Pirates. The one thing that I've learned how to do is tell stories, and that's Steve Logan does a great job telling stories, and I just listen to him all the time. And so I'm sorry we went a little long, but that's where I got.
Oh no!
Next time you talk to Coach Logan, you can just blame him.
Oh no, not a problem whatsoever. Like I said, we enjoyed it. We didn't want to keep you too long, but we're glad you enjoyed the conversation, as did we. And Pirate Nation, that is Terry Tilghman.
That concludes this edition of 50 Pirates in 50 Days on the Sports Objective. Remember, join us daily between now and game day as we'll talk Pirate football with players from various eras. All these interviews are available exclusively on SoundCloud and our YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe and follow so you're alerted when we post new content. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, go Pirates!